Then a single date on screen, February 24th, 2022. You probably remember exactly where you were. Most of us caught it between coffee and a commute, watched for a few minutes, shook our heads, and then went back to whatever we were doing. It's over there. 3 words. And right now, those 3 words are the most dangerous thing a person can believe, because it's not over there anymore. It hasn't been for a while. The problem is, the picture we've been given is too small, too fragmented. You see a headline about Ukraine, then one about the Middle East, then one about Taiwan. They feel like separate stories. They're not. They are the same story, told in different time zones. What I want to do today is give you the full map. Because once you see the whole map, the fear actually goes away. What replaces it is something more useful. Clarity. Let's start with where the world actually stands right now. The state of the world. This is not a normal moment in history. Right now, active military conflicts are running simultaneously in Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, the Sahel region of Africa, and the Middle East. Not sequentially. At the same time, there is a group called the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. They invented the Doomsday Clock during the Cold War, a symbolic measure of how close humanity is to self-destruction. In January 2026, they moved it to 89 seconds to midnight. For reference, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest America ever came to nuclear war, the clock sat at 7 minutes to midnight. We are now closer to catastrophe than at any point in that entire era. That is not a metaphor. It is a measurement. Global military spending hit $2.718 trillion in 2024, a 9.4% jump in a single year, the steepest increase since the Cold War ended. And here is the detail that should stop you. The world's 15 largest military spenders all raised their budgets simultaneously. Every single one. Countries do not do that when they feel safe. They do it when they are genuinely frightened. So what are they frightened of? Let's start with the domino most people have never heard of, and the one that is already falling. Domino 1, the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, 33 kilometers wide. You could almost swim it, and yet it is, without exaggeration, the most consequential piece of ocean on Earth right now. 20% of all the world's oil passes through it every single day. 20 million barrels. India draws 60% of its energy needs from that corridor. China, 40%. Japan, 75%. Japan's prime minister said it publicly. If the strait closes, Japan runs out of oil in 8 to 9 months, and the Japanese economy collapses along with it. The 6th largest economy on Earth, gone. Because of a 33-kilometer bottleneck. Iran closed it. Shipping traffic through Hormuz has dropped by roughly 75%. War risk insurance for vessels attempting passage has climbed 50% in a matter of weeks. Brent crude has already crossed $110 a barrel, up 39% from pre-conflict levels. Natural gas in Europe is up 59%. Fertilizer, the input that literally grows your food, up 34 to 35%. You feel that yet? Because that is not a foreign policy problem. That is a grocery bill problem. A heating bill problem. That is your problem. It's already in your life. It just hasn't been announced yet. Now here's the part most people never connect. The Gulf states, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, they import 80% of their food. Kuwait gets 90% of its drinking water from desalination plants. Saudi Arabia, 70%. Across the Gulf, 400 desalination plants produce nearly 40% of all desalinated water on Earth. 100 million people drink from them directly. Iran knows this. Their strategy in this conflict is not to defeat America in a straight fight. They can't. The play is simpler and colder than that. Hit infrastructure, oil fields, desalination plants, energy hubs. Make the region unlivable. Iran produces roughly 500 drones a day. Estimated stockpile, 80,000. Each one costs at most $50,000. The American interceptor missiles used to shoot them down cost $1 million each. That is a $950,000 disadvantage per drone, every single time. And the math only gets worse at scale. This is not a war of firepower. It is a war of arithmetic. And right now, the arithmetic is losing. On March 19th, 2026, the World Food Program issued an emergency warning. The Middle East conflict was triggering a rapidly unfolding humanitarian crisis, fuel and transport costs feeding through the entire food system, raising prices in markets thousands of miles from the fighting. This war is already in your supermarket. It just hasn't put its name on the receipt. Domino 2, the nuclear question. Now, here is where most people stop listening, because the assumption is nobody would actually do it. It is too crazy. It is unthinkable. The problem is Russia's military doctrine does not consider it unthinkable. It has an official strategy called escalate to de-escalate. The idea, if Russia starts losing badly in a conventional fight, they detonate a tactical nuclear weapon, not to win, but to stop the war entirely, to force everyone to blink, not crazy, cold, calculated, and baked into their actual military planning. June 2025. Ukraine launched drone strikes on Russian strategic bombers near the Kola Peninsula, close to Russia's nuclear assets, a non-nuclear country deliberately targeting nuclear delivery systems. Analysts called it one of the most destabilizing military actions in years. July 2025. France and the United Kingdom issued the Northwood Declaration, publicly stating their nuclear forces could be coordinated against any extreme European threat. Nuclear powers going on the record. Together. August 2025. President Trump ordered 2 nuclear submarines deployed to the region in response to Russian provocations. Nuclear submarines deployed, not as a metaphor, as a fact. Meanwhile, North Korea, which has been testing hypersonic ICBMs and announced its own nuclear-powered submarine, sent over 15,000 troops plus thousands of engineers to fight alongside Russia in Ukraine. In exchange for fuel, food, and military technology, this stopped being a Ukraine problem a long time ago. The U.S. intelligence community's 2026 annual threat assessment put it in plain language. The most dangerous threat posed by Russia is an escalatory spiral leading to direct hostilities, including nuclear exchanges. That is not a fringe scenario. That is the official assessment of the American intelligence apparatus. Domino 3, Taiwan. And then there's the wild card no one wants to discuss out loud, Taiwan. While the Middle East burned and Ukraine ground on, China watched and prepared. The Pentagon's 2025 China Military Power Report concluded that China expects to be capable of fighting and winning a war over Taiwan by the end of 2027. Not an estimate, a stated Chinese military planning benchmark. In 2025, Chinese aircraft conducted a record 3,570 incursions into Taiwan's surrounding airspace. December 2025, Beijing staged its largest military exercises around the island in years. That same month, the United States approved more than $11 billion in arms sales to Taiwan, the largest package ever. Japan, constitutionally pacifist since World War II, is now openly debating whether an attack on Taiwan triggers its own right to self-defense. And Japanese missiles are already deployed to Yonaguni Island, approximately 70 miles from Taiwan's coast. 70 miles. Should Taiwan fall, the entire Pacific balance of power shifts overnight. South Korea, Japan, the Philippines. Every American ally in the region recalculates its odds, and the global semiconductor supply chain, the one that runs through Taiwan, goes dark. No chips, no phones, no cars, no medical equipment, no defense systems. The modern economy paused because of an island most Americans cannot locate on a map. Why everything is happening at once? People keep asking, why is all of this happening at once? Here is the honest answer. For 70 years, the world ran on a system built after World War II. American-led, dollar at its center, American military bases as its enforcement mechanism. It wasn't perfect, but it held. What's happening now is that the system is being challenged from multiple directions at the same time. Russia is pushing on it in Eastern Europe. Iran is pushing on it in the Middle East. China is pushing on it in the Pacific, and the United States itself is divided about whether to defend that system or simply walk away from it. Countries are responding accordingly. 18 NATO members now spend at least 2% of GDP on defense, the highest number since that guideline was adopted. Poland is at 4.48%. Sweden, neutral for 200 years, raised defense spending by 34% in a single year. Countries do not do these things when they feel safe. What comes next? So, what actually happens next? Some of these steps have already begun. Step 1 is done. Energy prices spiked. Oil crossed $110. Gas in Europe up nearly 60%. Fertilizer up 35%. Every country that imports food felt it the moment it hit the shipping lanes. Step 2 is unfolding. Food insecurity is escalating. Over 670 million people were already hungry before this latest round of fighting. The WFP is calling it a dual choke point crisis. Supply chains already stressed by Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, now facing simultaneous disruption at Hormuz. Step 3 is regional expansion. The more the conflict widens, the more pressure builds on Japan, South Korea, and India to intervene, not out of ideology, but to protect their own energy supply. That is not a political choice. That is arithmetic. Step 4 is economic contagion. Gulf states have long been major investors in American financial markets. If those countries are destabilized, if sovereign wealth funds are forced to liquidate assets to fund their own defense, the American stock market does not just dip. Step 5 is the nuclear shadow. The Doomsday Clock panel specifically noted in 2026 an almost complete absence of communication on strategic stability among nuclear adversaries. That is the most lethal ingredient of all. Not intention, accident. The close. Wars almost never start because everyone sat down and decided they wanted one. They start because nobody watched the dominoes fall until it was too late. The diplomats, the generals, the presidents managing this, most of them do not want escalation. But escalation runs on its own logic. Once nuclear submarines have been deployed, once negotiators have been killed, once water infrastructure has been destroyed, the off-ramps get narrower and narrower. At 89 seconds to midnight, there's not a lot of room left for a mistake. So watch the Strait of Hormuz. Watch Taiwan. Watch what happens when the grocery bill doubles and the retirement account halves. Watch which leaders are willing to speak plainly and which ones aren't. This story is still being written. What happens next depends on whether enough people are paying attention.